Hey everyone, welcome back to Normies Like Us, where we break things down how they went from niche to normie. This week we're trying to link the fire and talking about the Dark Souls series, so buckle up, M'Bassa.
Come here, child. Fate of the undead, right?
I trust you, Patches. The one and only.
Have you seen my father?
I am the Dietmar of Catherine. If only I could be so grossly incandescent.
Praise the sun.
Hey, praise the sun everybody, we're here. Today I'm Mike and I have summoned in the help of...
Hi, I guess this is Sir Colin today.
Sir Joe.
And this is Jacob the Hunter.
Jacob the Peasant.
He's a hunter because he's been born from blood. So today we're talking the Dark Souls series. We're kind of breaking down how did it get as big as it has. It went from being very, very niche and obscure. You had to import Demon Souls to now it's the top-selling Bandai Namco game. Everybody knows the memes. Get good. Praise the sun. So basically a little setup here. If you're unaware, Dark Souls is an action RPG made by From Software. It released in 2011. It was preceded by Demon Souls in 2009. And then there's been two sequels, Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, and also Bloodborne, a Lovecraftian spin-off. It's known for its dark tone and difficult but fair gameplay. So the memes come from that it's hard. And
well, beyond that, I would say the reason we're going to be talking about it today is it is often considered the best game of all time. That is what internet culture has really adapted. You talked about meme before, but it really truly is related now as whether something is Dark Souls-like. A new video game comes out. It's hard. It's Dark Souls-like. It's anything. This aspect of it is Dark Souls-like. It's hard. You have to parry. Breath of the Wild came out. It's Dark Souls-like. Zelda, a game that came out a billion years before Dark Souls.
Yeah. And Zelda inspired Dark Souls. I mean, let's be fair.
But definitely Breath of the Wild was inspired by certain things from Dark
Absolutely.
Souls
I'd agree as well.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone's borrowing from each other. But yeah, that's a thing now. Every game is a Dark Souls game, and before that, Dark Souls couldn't describe itself. Demon Souls at the press conferences, they would be like, oh, it's kind of like Shadow of Colossus. We have these huge bosses because they didn't know how to talk about their own game. And now everybody talks about every game like it's Dark Souls.
Yeah.
It really building in the revolution.
Yeah.
It really changed a lot of things in gaming, I guess.
And interesting that they related to themselves as a JRPG.
Yeah, I mean, it's an action RPG, but it is an RPG. It's a Japanese RPG with Western stylings and trappings,
right?
But it's action RPG, so it's not turn-based. That being said, I want to ask, where are you on the spectrum? How deep do we go here? Have you played all the games? Have you played none of the games? Colin?
I think other than you, Mike, I'm going to be our deepest dive here. I would put myself at about the mid-range. I've played Demon Souls just a little bit. It's a video game that I bought for my brother originally. I read in a PlayStation magazine that it was the best game around, and I thought, he loves video games. He would love this. He ended up, of course, never touching the thing, and I played only about a level with him. But then I saw that Dark Souls came out from the same company, and I thought, wow, this is something I have to check out. It's a video game that I've heard so much about. Boom, blown away. I would argue one of the best video games I've ever played in my life. Just such a deep, deep mythology that I loved right away. Loved fantasy, loved all the elements of it.
All right, Joe.
Oh, I'm as normie as it gets with Dark Souls. I have not played a single game in the series, mostly just aware through the homies and the meme economy, basically seeing Praise the Sun and Get Good and things like that posted all over the place, and also just hearing it as a moniker of the Dark Souls of this. Like basically anything that seemed difficult as a normie seems like it's the Dark Souls of that.
Makes sense. All right, Jacob the Hunter.
Yes. I guess I would be somewhere between Colin and Joe's level of experience with the game because I've played some of Dark Souls 1 and I've played most of Bloodborne, which is my favorite. And I own Dark Souls 3 because I bought it on sale, but I actually have not played it yet. But at some point I will get around to it. And I know I've watched I've watched gameplay of all of them on YouTube and stuff like that. So I'm familiar with them enough to hold a conversation about. Yeah.
Bloodborne, a spin-off, or how we categorizing that?
It's not a spin-off in terms of story. It's a totally different universe and story, but it takes a lot of the gameplay aspects and the level design and stuff like that. So it is similar in core gameplay aspects.
Yeah, Bloodborne is made by the same company, From Software. The same director who directed Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 was spearheading the Bloodborne operation.
And Demon Souls came out first, right? So that's kind of where everything kicked off. We had Demon Souls,
Right.
then the Dark Souls universe, and then Bloodborne kind of off to the side.
Yeah, basically, Bloodborne became a project because Demon Souls was made by From Software, and Sony didn't want to publish it. They thought it was a bad game. They thought it was too hard. They thought people weren't going to buy it, so they didn't want to even publish it. So Atlas picked it up and published it. They made a bunch of money. It broke sales records in Japan. People were importing it. And then they made Dark Souls with Bandai Namco. And Sony kind of felt bad, like, oh, we want a game too. And because they started with Demon Souls, they were like, all right, we'll throw you a bone. We'll make Bloodborne for you.
And that's why it's a PlayStation exclusive.
That's exactly
Wow.
why. So they were kind of sad that they didn't publish it, because it became this huge breakout success. And then From Software threw them a bone and said, look, we're going to give the rights to Bandai for the Dark Souls property, but we'll make a new property for you.
But arguably, there is a contingent of fans that do rate Bloodborne as the best of all Soulsborne games.
There are people that say that Bloodborne is the best, and that could be attributed to Hidetaka Miyazaki, the director. That was his third go. He had his beta in Demon Souls, his alpha in Dark Souls, and then he could really push it on the next generation of consoles with Bloodborne.
Putting everything you learned together, obviously, you're going to make the best game if it's your third try doing it.
Exactly. And it wasn't tied down to the trappings of... Like, Dark Souls 3 gets a lot of flack for being fan servicey.
Right.
And Dark Souls 2 was headed up by the B team, which I like Dark Souls 2 a lot, but it wasn't Miyazaki's direction on that.
So should we
like
all
Dark
go around?
Soul-
Oh, sorry. go
No,
ahead.
please go right ahead.
Like at least the three of us, we could like kind of rate the games in like the order that we like them, or like what's your favorite Dark Souls game?
That's a great idea.
That's a good idea. Do you want to kick it off, Colin?
Let's top or bottom this. Talking Dark Souls, if I had to start out, I would put Dark Souls 1 definitely at the top of my list. It is what I would consider a perfect game. Beating that game, one of the highest achievements of video gameplay in my life.
And as a normie, how long did it take you to get through a game start to finish, like hour-wise?
All right, so picture this, Joe. I'm buying that game. I'm not beating it till 2 years later.
Oh my God.
I am not kidding when I'm saying that. And I'm talking playing every weekend at least. I'm also talking periods where I'm taking months off in absolute frustration and saying to my friends, I do not like that video game anymore.
Yeah, I quit Dark Souls 1 the first time I played it. I played about 45 minutes, and I was like, it's not really for me. And I didn't come back to it for like maybe a year.
The good old-fashioned rage quit.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, it was the first boss, or not the first boss, but the second boss in Dark Souls 1. I just
talking
didn't get past him.
the
Taurus Demon.
Yeah. For some reason, he was really fucking with me, and then I just didn't play it for a year, but then I picked it back up.
Did you figure out how to cheese them?
Yeah, and I figured you could drop down on him.
Yeah, see, they teach you
See,
that.
there we
Yeah.
go. You learn through experience, and that's exactly that old school style gameplay that I kind of miss. Searching out the tips and tricks of how to beat it.
Right. Hey, Jacob, and what's your favorite?
So personally, I mean, I've only played Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne, but I've watched gameplay of them all. I do like Bloodborne the best. I just like the more aggressive, faster paced action gameplay style, and in Dark Souls, usually you have a shield, and it's shield first, then attack, that kind of thing, or roll. Whereas Bloodborne is a lot more rolling. There's a lot more attacking first, and then also if you get hit, you can attack to recover your damage, and so it's much more offensively
Minded.
Yeah.
So would you say that is more of an action game than Dark Souls?
Well,
or
at the end of at the core gameplay, they're very similar. It's just a little more aggressive and a little more attack first, whereas Dark Souls, it's more steady, wait for your opening and then attack.
God, I love that differentiation. And we'll get into styles of gameplay later,
Yeah.
but that's so funny that you talk about using the shield in the left hand. I was sort of a dual wielder myself, going charging head first.
guns a-blazing?
That
That's
feels
right.
like a second playthrough kind of thing. A lot of people
Yeah,
were
a little
definitely sword and board, I think, early on.
Yeah.
I rank Dark Souls 1 as the best. Dark Souls 1 is the Smash Brothers Melee of the series because the beta is Demon Souls. It has some rough edges, but
absolutely.
it lays the foundation, and then it's perfected to some people's perspective in Dark Souls. Like that's the sweet spot. That's the recipe. And there's people who love Melee and nothing after that. Even though there might be arguments to be made that there's better versions. So Dark Souls 1, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, 3. Then Bloodborne's not at the bottom. Bloodborne's after Demon Souls. Dark Souls 3 is at the bottom.
So
Go
for
ahead,
you,
Joe.
Bloodborne is kind of just like off to the side then. You don't really consider it as close to the other ones?
It's just its themes are not like I prefer the dark fantasy to the Lovecraftian stuff. It plays amazingly, like it's great. It's just
See, I love the aesthetics of Bloodborne too
Yeah.
over the Dark Souls aesthetics, although I like them both.
that's what it comes down to is what aesthetic do you prefer?
Yeah.
Really, they won Game of the Year. I mean, Dark Souls was Game of the Year and Bloodborne was Game of the Year because they came out a year
Right.
after each other.
They're both good too.
Wow, so they were running the gauntlet there for a minute, just had it on lockdown.
From Software went from being this weird boutique company, you know, they were doing Armored Core robot games and stuff, and now they're like a juggernaut because of the success of Dark Souls. So they truly went from a niche developer to a normie developer just from the series.
Well, that's great, and I love those takes. Joe, a little different one. We'll tease this out, but something coming up at the end of the episode.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have my first experience with a Dark Souls game. Actually getting the controller in my hand. I've seen gameplay on YouTube and Let's Plays and things like that, but also sitting on the couch watching you play through Dark Souls. And it never seemed like something I really wanted to do because I didn't want to lose the controller and the TV by throwing one through the other. But I'm excited and a little nervous.
Well,
to
let's
actually
hope by
get
the end
into
of
it.
this that you'll end up ranking this as one of your favorites, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and I want to briefly mention, you know, when my first experience with Dark Souls. Basically, I broke my foot skateboarding, and I couldn't, you know, do much outside of the house. So my cousin mailed me Dark Souls 1 and 2, the games. He's like, play these, and they're so difficult. So I played
Yeah.
Dark Souls 1, got to the Taurus Demon, said, fuck this, took it out, put Dark Souls 2 in, and started playing it. And it took me like 170 hours to beat it. Because Dark Souls 2 is the only game where the enemies despawn.
Right.
So I could just slowly kill one enemy at a time and eventually get to the boss, you know, even if I was terrible.
Ended up being a bit of a lifesaver, though, for you.
Yeah, it definitely changed my life.
So that one goes through easier. Dark Souls 2 gets easier as you go, and the other ones, I mean, don't they get more difficult?
Well, I think Dark Souls 2, from gameplay that I've seen, I think it's my least favorite because of that aspect. Because part of Dark Souls is that you can go through levels and grind for souls, you know, and grind for blood and Bloodborne, because that can help you level up if you're a little bit behind where you need to be to face the next boss.
Oh, so that really brings in the RPG elements. Do
Yeah.
you guys play a lot of other RPGs? I've only played a handful of
I do,
RPGs.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big RPG player. I grew up playing Final Fantasy games, Suikoden, and all those PlayStation 1 RPGs, you know, Breath of Fire, all that. Colin?
Final Fantasy, anything like that. But I got to agree with Jacob here. You know, Dark Souls 2, Mike, I was surprised to hear that number 3 is on your shit list. For me, it's Dark Souls 2. Always kind of just felt like a second chapter opposed to a new book.
I feel like, for me, I like that Dark Souls 2 is not related to Dark Souls 1 at all. Like, it feels removed enough. Like, you could change its name to Cursed Souls or something, and it could be a completely separate, almost a Bloodborne split.
Because that's not following the same exact story that you see expanded on in Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3.
No, it's the same universe, but it's like thousands of years later, kingdoms built on top of kingdoms over and over and over. So
Whereas 3 is more of a
direct link.
sequel to 1.
Yeah, a little more lore and myth.
Yeah, it's like Lordran.
As a
connected.
normie, the mythos of the universe just seemed so expansive. Like,
It's
how did you
dense,
guys get into the world?
You want to tackle this, Colin?
Yeah, I would say just through playing that game, you know, you get so curious. It's a game that is so punishingly difficult, as we've mentioned before, but also in how it tells its story, which is primarily a narrative that is told in the background. You know, you don't get a lot of direct character interactions. You get stories told through item usage and purchasing and more of a background of the characters just by reading the world around them.
Yeah, and there's almost no cutscenes. There's an opening cutscene and then a little intro when a boss comes out. That's it. There's no story cutscenes or anything.
So how does the world building happen then? If you're not seeing it played through cinematics, is it just like discovery in gameplay, or?
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating, the naturalism that it takes. You know, again, if we were sort of dropped down into one of these worlds, you wouldn't get all the answers that we would want. If you were the chosen undead, you know, rising up in an afterlife to reignite the fire and the flame, you know, you wouldn't know any of that. We do as outsiders from reading and obsessively following on the internet, but I think the beauty of the game is that you're just thrown into it.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, when I first played Dark Souls 1, just based off the intro cutscene and then getting thrown in, I did not understand the story at all. I was like, I do not know what's going on. I'm just playing this game. Same thing with Bloodborne. Like, the story in Bloodborne really makes no sense, and it's like what? And then I think the one ending that you can have in Bloodborne, you get like turned into a squid, and
I did not know that.
I believe that's the true ending. You become like a moon
that's the good
squid
ending.
baby.
That is a very
Okay.
like HP Lovecraftian.
That game
Absolutely.
is pure Lovecraft. All the influences for Bloodborne.
But one thing that Bloodborne does that is cool is there's certain doors in the city that will have a light on. You can go up to them, and someone will talk to you through the door, and it adds a little bit of extra story to the game. It's pretty interesting.
See, not really that much in Dark Souls like that.
So you're getting context built in through gameplay then.
It's all diegetic.
Oh, definitely.
Wow.
Like there's not even really a true tutorial.
Yeah.
Like,
You just have to kind of learn. Well, in Dark Souls 1, there is a tutorial right in the beginning,
but it's still taught to you through experience. Like you
Yeah.
start out and there's a non-hostile enemy and you get a weapon, so you can attack him without risk. And then you pick up a shield. At the end of the hallway is an archer shooting an arrow. Like, oh, block the arrow with the shield we gave you. Like they're trying to like do it organically.
And that's a
Hey,
game where,
figure it out, dummy.
yeah, here you go.
and literally 20 steps later, you're fighting your first boss.
And he kills you, and then you can learn, oh, maybe I should run away. And there's an open door.
right? Oh, that's such a great opening to Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
I did like that a lot.
It's one of the best tutorial areas in games. Then, if I can transition quickly to Firelink Shrine, you kill the Asylum Demon, you get to the hub area. This is the area where it's your home base. You have your merchants, your NPCs, anybody you meet in the world, they go back there. And from this point, you can go anywhere you want, to any of the
Right.
other branching paths. So, the Crestfallen Warrior, he's a real bummer, right? He's telling you, this world sucks, you know? Oh, hey, you're another one of the chosen undead. Well, good luck. You can ring a bell. And they tell you there's two places you can go. You can go up or down.
Right.
So you just have all these branching paths, and you can go any way you want. It's just more difficult in certain directions.
And when I played Dark Souls 1 for the first time, I made the classic mistake of going down in the graveyard with the skeletons and then trying to fight those skeletons for like 2 hours. And I'm like, why are these guys so strong? Why do I keep dying?
I don't know why your initial reaction would be to go to a graveyard with skeletons.
Well, they
Like,
kind
I'm
of, they look
trying
like
to-
normal guys that you would have to fight on along the way. They don't look special at all, but yeah.
See, that's so funny that you say classic mistake. I thought you were going to say attacking the first guy that you come across. That was my rookie move. I really tried to play sort of a solo alone version of the game at first. Did not realize how much collaboration in the game you truly need to survive.
Yeah, and actually, let me touch on the skeletons, and I want to talk about cooperation. Like most games, look at Castlevania, you're fighting skeletons early on.
Right.
So you go
The
to...
weakest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you go to where there's skeleton guys, like, oh, I can do this.
They look like normal enemies.
And they kick your ass. You're
Yeah.
like, I should be able to beat skeletons, right? Even in like you fight skeletons, it's not that hard. And they'll wreck you. And the game is just like, if you push against that wall, you might break through it. Or you can just go up another path. And
Right,
that's...
and just level up before you.
then
before
the
you hit those
easier
guys,
path is
yeah.
to go up, right? But like, it's like skeletons, they're not easy in this.
Yeah.
Like even then, they're subverting your gamer expectation. And back to the difficulty and the cooperation, like there's no difficulty choice. There's no easy, hard, but it's built into the game.
Right.
So if you're a melee build, the game is tuned to melee. It's going to be difficult for that. But if you're a mage, it's going to be easier. And if you can't beat a boss, you can summon in another player to help you. Or
Right.
summon in an NPC. So they give you ways to adjust your difficulty in game, as opposed to a switch. And I think that's really cool.
So again, it's all coming like organically. It's not ABC. It's kind of through your own experience.
The systems are set up to, if you want to take advantage of a system to make it easier, do it. There's no shame in that. Some players will say, oh, you shouldn't bring help ever, do it solo. Those are the elitists, but whatever gets you through and whatever is fun for you, you should do. And they put all that in there to give the player that choice. If it's too hard, you can
Right.
find another way.
And even the use of notes on the ground and stuff that can give you hints and stuff, and people can like troll people and
Oh,
stuff.
those
Oh,
are
I
classic.
love that part of the game.
Did you have a favorite, like, what did you ever get got? Like, what?
Oh, absolutely.
And
I have
just
fallen for, so Joe, just to give you a little hint here, yeah. In the game Dark Souls, one of the multiplayer aspects of it is you can get a crystal, an orange stone, that allows you to write very short messages, whatever you want, that other players can see. One of the number one trolls, absolutely, that I've ever fallen for is people saying jump here by cliffs that just, you would assume, lead you to secret treasures or special items. Nope, just kills you.
Yeah, I'd be on the ground right by a cliff. It'll say, try jumping, treasure ahead. And like they make it with these, there's like parts of speech that have nouns, verbs, and stuff. So you just kind of Lego together these phrases. Yeah, try jumping always got me.
Yeah.
The people always did troll messages too. Like you get outside of Guinevere, she's like one of the NPCs, and it says "Great chest ahead." Demon Souls had sticky white stuff in it.
Oh, yeah.
You would like make your weapon magical. It's like you get it from spiders, but they put by the NPCs, try sticky white stuff, attack from rear. All this dumb shit in the message system.
Hilarious.
But that's another thing that this game really pioneered is this asymmetrical multiplayer. Like it's always multiplayer, but it's also always not multiplayer.
Yes, that's very challenging the first time you play the game to sort of understand that stance that it takes.
Yeah.
Is it almost like bringing in elements of like MMO into the RPG, where it's like a big world with other players, or
Usually you're only with like one or two other players, right, at a time.
So to connect it to that difficulty thing that I said, so when you die, your health is decreasing, right? And you can use an item called a humanity to give yourself more health. And when you do that, when you are human, you can bring other players in to help you, but you're also opening yourself up for other players to come in and kill you.
Right.
So if you want to make it easier or have more health, you're also opening up the door for this PvP realm where people can come attack you, in which case you get somebody to help protect you,
That is a big element of the game. It's called invading. My issue with it is you see a lot of game breakers, a lot of people who come in, coded out, maxed out with crazy stats. And unfortunately, I've seen this posted in the subreddit a lot that people will bust in on their runs, sort of ruin the game for players because it really sort of resets and punishes you pretty severely in this game for that sort of gameplay.
That's true. Do you think there should be like an option to like turn it off if
I
you
would
want
love
to?
that personally.
well, it doesn't seem like the game wants to give you a lot of options. They want you to experience it as is.
To turn it off, you just don't be human. Like, don't look
That's such a challenge in the gameplay itself.
It affects
Only-
other aspects of the gameplay, right?
only if you set that in your mind. Look at full health as a buff. That's not your stat. Your max
What Dark
health-
Souls has done to you, Mike.
He says lower your standards and it'll be fine.
Or just
Yeah.
get good.
Well,
Get
that way,
good.
just look at half of your health bar is full. All your health. The health
Right.
bar is not half empty. It's all full.
Yeah.
What a
you could
video
just
game
double it if
optimist,
you,
people.
But yeah, the system where you get invaded, like that's crazy. The first time, like you're trying to get to a boss,
Right.
and then this guy comes with end level gear and just wrecks you. And that's a big problem. The toxic part of the community just griefs low level players
Yeah.
in the early areas.
That is
Personally, I would like
unfortunate.
an
Yeah.
option to just turn it off and not. And if you just want to play offline single
You
player, that
can
should
play
be
the
an
game in
option.
offline mode.
Yeah. Oh.
Do you think the community is kind of rejecting how normie the game has become? I mean, it's about to get a remaster, right?
Joe, that's a really interesting question. And we're already sort of seeing some negative reaction online to that game before it's released, just based on stats and other mining that fans have done. I would say yes. I would say that is a direct reaction to how standardized the game is becoming.
Yeah, I mean, part of that too, like the early level griefing, like the community itself is gatekeeping itself. Like they want casuals, filthy casuals to get out. And that's why you have some of these players who are trying to make it difficult for new players to get into it. And then the remaster, hopefully we don't see a lot of that because there's going to be a lot of new players jumping in.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Like, I think the bigger a community is that likes a game, the better. Everyone should be able to enjoy a game.
I don't want to shit
whatever
all
skill
over
level.
invading, though. I have had players help me out, take on different bosses in the game.
There are, go ahead.
Have you met anyone that you've like continued to talk to through the game, or
No, unfortunately not
And
with
you
Dark Souls.
cannot talk to them. There's no voice
that is
chat.
a good aspect. Yeah,
Oh,
very
okay.
true.
All you have is gestures. That's why the
praise the sun?
Praise the
Sun
sun, and
thing.
we're all doing it right now, listeners.
Yeah. So, but there's some fun ones. There's some good people. Like a red invader is an enemy who wants to kill you. You can also bring in a white phantom who will help you. Right.
Right.
But there's guys. There was a famous Dark Souls 3 invader. He was the fashion police,
Oh, whoa.
and he would invade you, and he would come up and look at your outfit. And then he would drop a piece of gear that would look better, and then just go away.
That's hilarious.
Wow.
That's
And,
hilarious.
like he wouldn't fight you. He would just come in.
What if you try to fight him though?
he would probably Blackstone out? He'd probably be upset. He'd not.
That's
give you
really
anything
funny. That's a good use of that. I wish there
That
were
is a
more like
great
people like
memer.
that.
good. Yeah.
I keep drinking fucking juice, man. I'm a thirsty boy.
Right.
Use up all your juice?
Oh, they just keep reforming. What the fuck am I doing? I gotta get out of here.
Oh no!
I learned my lesson, but too late.
Yeah.
Oh,
Dark Souls.
Well,
I did learn my lesson, so I know what to do next time.
To talk about the difficulty of the game even further, some gestures can only be unlocked with certain packs in the game where you're deciding what direction you want to go inside the game. So that limits your communication even further.
that's right. You talking Covenant system?
That's right, talking about covenants.
Yeah, all right. So Covenants, that's another part of this PvP where, let's say, the Dark Moons or the Forest Protectors, right? You join a Covenant, which is basically a faction. And then if somebody is engaged in combat in that area, you can be brought in. Like if you're a Blue Sentinel, you're basically the police in Dark Souls 2. You're the good guys. So someone can summon you to get help, and you like go and fight their invader for them, and you help them out. You're a good guy. So you'll get pulled into situations by joining these Covenants. It'll proc automatically, and you'll like enter into somebody else's game world to help them or defeat them.
So do you guys have invader personalities or types that you like to play?
I have helped people out. I will be honest about that. I like to be a good guy.
Wow, what a good
Yeah,
spirit.
when I've been hitting my head against the wall for a boss for a while, and I finally beat it, I will lay my sign down and try to help people get past it too, because like I just had a tough time. So
Have you ever invaded someone to attack them?
I do not invade people. It's just not my character.
Right.
But I don't think there's anything wrong
Colin?
with it.
I'm
feel
proud
like-
to say, no, I have not. I'm proud to say I have killed 2 invaders who have tried to fuck my shit
wow.
up personally.
Very good.
Who
There you
truly,
go.
another aspect of the game that you don't realize, it locks you into the area that you are at. You
Right.
cannot escape when the invader's there.
It can happen at any time you're
At any
playing.
time, but it comes down to a showdown.
Yeah.
So I'm proud to say I've kicked some ass.
So playing a game that my understanding up until today was just a solo game you play by yourself. At any given
there's-
point,
yeah.
someone who's way better at the game could close down
Come
my
wreck your
map to
shit.
close quarters and just like a bully, take my lunch money.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yes, just take your lunch
That's
money.
terrifying. I hope I don't get invaded today.
Yeah.
The worst.
Depends on just keep that half health and no one will invade you. Just stay hollow, my
Right.
friends. Yeah, that's like such a crazy thing. And like when Demon Souls first introduced that invasion system, and the other cool thing is you'll see the ghosts of other players. So like if you're fighting a boss, you'll see the ghost of someone else like who had just fought them. So you'll see like how they died or something.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about tutorial earlier. That's almost the tutorial, getting to watch these ghosts move in front of you and thinking, well, I just saw him get taken out.
might be
Maybe
an
I
ambush.
should. Yeah.
Be careful, yeah.
Mike, you had mentioned your character before, and it would go against your character. At its core, it is an RPG. You are in a role-playing game.
That's true.
I mean, how much does that affect the gameplay? Because I always kind of saw it more as like an action type, but I was kind of ignoring the role-playing aspects.
It has all those elements. I mean, it has your strength stat, dexterity stat, intelligence, like all those classic D&D character sheet stats. They play into what weapons you can wield, what armor you can wear, what spells you can use, stuff like that. So
The role and class that you choose as well sort of determines your progress in the game.
If I could bring it back to Bloodborne for a minute.
yeah.
The way they do it in Bloodborne is really interesting because I think in Dark Souls there's a lot of weapon choices that you can get throughout the game and stuff, right? Whereas in Bloodborne there's fewer weapon choices. Like I think there's only like maybe 12 weapons in the base game or something like that. But you can use the first weapon that you start with, and just by using gems and things, you can level it up as you level up. So you actually could never change. Like you could play that with the same weapon the entire game and just level it up.
So almost like Thor, your weapon is
Yeah.
as attached to your character as you are.
Right.
Absolutely, and
It's
you're going
really
down a
cool.
path with it. That's very interesting.
And so I like that about it too. Just throw that out there.
No, yeah. And like, did you ever get invaded when you played Bloodborne, or did you engage with that system?
No, I don't know. Maybe if I had it like on offline mode or something, but I never did any of the invasion stuff in Bloodborne.
If I can touch on one story regarding Demon Souls in this asymmetrical multiplayer, there's one boss, the old monk, and basically this boss worked where you could get summoned as a player to be the boss. So you would
Oh,
inhabit
wow.
the boss, and then another
That's cool.
player would be fighting you, and you would be playing the boss character trying to defeat them.
Dark Souls, Demon Souls, really pushing that moral quandary on you. I don't know if I want that responsibility.
But it was cool because it's like you're playing an actual player who has their moveset plus, magic.
It really engages you in the experience of the game. Again, like I feel like that's something I keep coming back to is Demon Souls and Dark Souls beyond just being a game seems like an experience you go through.
It is, you experience that game. You don't really play it. Like it is like an experience. Same with Bloodborne. Like you're going through this world where everything is oppressive and it's up to you and your decisions and your own ability to persevere in the face of adversity,
Absolutely.
But as far as where it's at now, the remaster's coming out. There's mixed feelings about it because from what I understand, it's like the PC is having some pushback. You heard anything about this?
Yeah, I don't know. The main issue, and I guess we'll jump right onto that, is port versus remaster, right?
Yeah, so Dark Souls 1 is the crown gem, right? And now we have a port. Potentially, it looks like a PC port to console, but...
Yeah, and that's my issue. As a fan, do I want to rebuy this game again? I've now played it on 2 different platforms, Xbox and Xbox 360. Do I want to get it for the Nintendo Switch and start playing Dark Souls on mobile? As we mentioned before, again, kind of the ultimate normie moment for Dark Souls to become tied to Nintendo.
Yeah, Amiibo's out now.
Really?
The Amiibos.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know? Yeah, the remaster's coming out on Switch.
Wow.
And they got a Solaire Amiibo now.
I mean, if you can buy a toy for it, it's pretty normie.
Oh, absolutely.
That's true.
Did you say they're doing Dark Souls on mobile?
Switch.
Switch.
Just that you can go anywhere with the Switch.
Oh, I see.
Dark Souls mobile.
Which it has no save or pause feature. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, exactly. Again, and it seems like if you were moving in and out of Wi-Fi and other internet access, I just don't know how that is going to work.
Wait, you're telling me you cannot pause
Oh, yeah, there's no pause
the
button.
game?
Sorry, if you thought that you had regular video game concessions, you do not.
Yeah, I guess I really should have dropped that from the top of the episode.
Yeah, even when you're like, let's say you're in combat and you want to switch to a different weapon, that enemy's still attacking you. You're in the
you gotta get
inventory.
away.
Yeah, you got to deal with that now.
So later there's not going to be a pause in asking how I do something.
No.
Nope, get ready.
The game will just give you instantaneous feedback that you did it wrong. That's kind of how it works. But isn't that how life is? Trial and error.
It is.
I told my cousin, because it's like skateboarding, you fuck up the trick, you fuck it up, and you land it. And then you want to do something harder because you just succeeded. That's how this game is. You just fuck it up, and you fuck it up, and you fuck it up. And then you beat the boss, and then you're like, well, what's next?
Right.
Like you feel so good, and then you want that next high, that next challenge.
What else you got?
Yeah.
Well, let's agree on this, though, at least. The future of Dark Souls is not grim as far as the video game aspect, because even if this is just a port and people will be playing the same old game, it'll be new people playing that game, and that popularity for Dark Souls is just going to grow and grow.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead. No.
I was just going to say, knowing nothing about news or anything, what are the plans for like future sequels or anything?
That's a good question, actually. Do you know anything about this?
I don't. Please hit me.
So, Miyazaki has said Dark Souls 3 is the end of Dark Souls, the series, right?
Oh, I did not know that. That's kind of killer.
That's what he said. But lately, he's also released a statement that says, I can't control what my, what the people who come after me do. Like, I can't stop them from making another Souls game.
Right.
So really what he's saying is he's done after Dark Souls 3.
That's what he's saying.
but
It's
it's
kinda
probably
heartbreaking.
going to keep going.
Yeah, and let me give you a quick Miyazaki background. He started in the video game industry when he was about 30. He was working as a tech developer for Oracle in the States, So he never made any games. He started when he was 30, and he heard about Demon Souls. He loved Western fantasy, and he knew that From Software was going to make a fantasy game to compete with Oblivion and Skyrim. Skyrim was huge, right? So it's like, we're going to have a Western-style RPG, but the company was kind of abandoning it. So he's like, if I can get this, even if I fail, no one will care. The game's already a failure. That's when he made Demon Souls. So he went from being a no-experience guy making Demon Souls to Dark Souls, and now he is the president of From Software.
Wow, that was a hell of a gamble he took.
Yeah.
Real rags to riches there.
Real rags to riches. So, yeah, he does not have the same time to focus on just Dark Souls. He's running the entire company. So it makes sense that he is done, but he's not limiting the scope of From Software doing more.
Well, and do you think that they could use similar gameplay aspects and stuff in other games by From Software that could be set in different worlds, but would be similar to the Soulsborne
like
gameplay
Dark Souls
style?
set in space.
Ooh, I would love that.
Space Souls, huh?
Space Souls or just anything else, just not connected to Dark Souls, but similar to Bloodborne.
Yeah, like that Victorian
Yeah,
dark
they could
setting.
do that. Or
Yeah,
they could do
HP
anything. Any
Lovecraft.
kind of setting. I feel like even if they don't make more Dark Souls games, the gameplay aspects could live on.
Yeah, because those have even been spun off to many other games or copying
Right.
it. They have a game coming out. They're teasing Shadows Die Twice. They had a 40-second teaser. It looks like this bone mechanism with a rope tied around it. There's some Japanese script in the back. And
Wow, I don't know anything about this.
yeah, we'll show you the trailer. They just had that one image, and it says Shadows Die Twice. People are speculating because From Software had the rights to the Tenchu series, and that was a line from the Tenchu game, Ninjas or Shadows. Shadows Die Twice. There's like also a demon influence on some of those games, that maybe it will be a new Tenchu game. So I could see a ninja version of Dark Souls.
That would be cool.
Interesting.
Like a
Sure, and you
samurai.
mentioned Armored Core earlier. That was a video game series I was a big fan of as a kid. It was essentially customizable robots battling each other and had a great story mode as well. I would really love to see a resurrection of that series as well.
With E3 right around the corner, are there any actual predictions you think we're going to see during their presentation?
Here's what I'll say. We've talked a little bit about rivalries on this podcast, Marvel versus DC. Here's a big one we haven't touched on. Xbox versus PlayStation. I have seen a ton of PlayStation fans clamoring, saying they're going to get the best exclusives, and one of the ones that they want is Bloodborne 2.
Yes.
I think for sure that is something we're going to hear about.
Yeah, PlayStation does have the best exclusives. I have to agree with that.
Not what I'm saying. Not here to start that fight.
Oh, I'll jump on that bandwagon, though. They are getting Spider-Man PS4 this year, so
fair
maybe
enough.
they do.
Yeah.
But I would love a Bloodborne 2. I think that would be great. I don't know if that will happen, but that would be great.
There's a Reddit user who is claiming to be an insider with E3. It's coming up this summer, right? And he's saying that he knows what From Software is going to announce.
Wow.
Everyone's asking about Shadows Die Twice. He says they're going to do a presentation on it. He won't say what it is. People are saying, is it Bloodborne? He claims it is not Bloodborne 2, but that doesn't mean there will never be Bloodborne 2. I think they would definitely make that as Game of the Year.
Yeah.
But for this E3, we'll definitely learn about Shadows Die Twice. And Armored Core is also in the works, a new Armored Core game.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they promised Sony that they would get, I think, 3 or 4 exclusive titles. I think Armored Core is going to be one of those. Bloodborne was the first, maybe a sequel to Bloodborne, and Shadows Die Twice.
And Shadows
Very
Die
cool,
Twice, which
very
I will be
cool.
on the lookout for,
Yeah,
for
I'll
sure.
be as well.
Well, with E3, it's June 12th through the 14th, so it's right around the corner here.
True.
We'll see what they actually announce.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting E3. It's actually for From Software fans, for sure.
All right, well, that's talking Dark Souls. As far as video games go, let's jump in on the movie side of things.
Let's do it.
Oh, that's my dead body.
So you can pick up your blood stain, and if you had souls,
Your soul's back.
Yeah, your experience.
See ya,
back.
fuckers.
B, is that wrong? What's the button?
Hold down maybe A or maybe B.
Circle
not
a
A.
PlayStation controller.
Oh, shit,
Oh,
dog.
these guys just stopped me. Oh my god, there's so many of them! I died already. What the fuck?
So we were talking the video game Dark Souls. Let's go ahead and look at it from another angle. Let's talk about Dark Souls as a movie.
Yeah, there is no Dark Souls movie right now.
Ooh, bummer. There is a movie called Dark Souls, though.
Came out the same year as the game.
Oh, is
From-
that true?
Yeah, from Norway. Both 2011, both named Dark Souls, but they are not related at all.
To be fair, Dark Souls is kind of like the perfect. Oh, is that a horror movie? Is that a fantasy movie?
There's
I don't know.
some-
I'm clicking it.
There's some really bad trivia with the Dark Souls name, too. Because they, it was Demon Souls originally. So they were trying to come up with a new name. And, in Japan, trying to translate stuff directly to English, they wanted to do Dark Race, which is
Ooh, uh-oh.
terrible. They also wanted to do Dark Ring, which is slang for like asshole in English, like in Britain. So Dark Souls is much better than those. But yeah,
You can't call the game asshole. That's not going to play.
no.
No, I could see maybe a police procedural, Dark Souls maybe, but no, I don't know.
Doom, doom.
That's true.
These are their stories.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hundreds of thousands of souls are lost every day. These are their stories.
But, let's talk about...
In Orlando, 6 p.m.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. We should make that.
Dun.
Don't steal the series ideas.
Copyright.
Copyright.
Normies like us.
Dick Wolf, don't listen to
2018.
this.
So video game movies, right? There's not a lot of good ones. The only good one that I can think of is Double Dragon.
I love Double
great.
Dragon, but I also love Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
So
Okay, well, Joe, would you go on... Now, I'm going to count that as a joke, Mike, but Joe, would you say maybe that's your favorite video game movie adaptation, Super Mario Brothers?
absolutely, I will 100% stand by that. As an adaptation, obviously, it's nothing like it. But as a pop culture joke, Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo fighting Dennis Hopper in a, I guess, sci-fi or like cyberpunk universe where they are plumbers.
And Dennis Hopper is not playing Bowser; he's playing King Koopa, right?
Yeah,
He's
something
not even-
like
No. He's playing Bowser, and he
really? His name
transforms
is Bowser?
into an actual dinosaur. I don't want to darken its name because
All right.
if you're looking for a sequel to that movie, I'm down to write it.
All right. Well, I mean, there's no games that have been made from Dark Souls, but how would you do it? I mean, Bloodborne actually has some influence from a movie called Brotherhood of the Wolf. Have any of you guys seen that movie?
Oh, no, I
Ooh,
haven't.
French film. Actually, I have seen that.
Yeah. If you look at the cover art for Brotherhood of the Wolf, their hats are A1 on point, exactly like the Bloodborne hunter's hat. They got the high collar covering their
Muffle,
mouth.
I believe it's
I'm
called.
into that.
Yep. And they got this, somebody came back from Africa with a lion and like this beast, and they put a bunch of crazy armor on it, and it's this beast that's terrorizing this village, and these guys are there to kill the monster. They're hunting a monster. It's very Bloodborne. Brotherhood of the Wolf.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Bloodborne seems like it would be a little more accessible to a general audience, just buying into that kind of H.P. Lovecraft, Van Helsing almost esque
Hellboy.
character. Hellboy, yeah.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
Dark Souls, which is a lot more of like, you called it earlier, low fantasy.
Yeah. It's
Ooh, I
almost
like that.
Yeah, like Game of Thrones is almost low fantasy. It has dragons, but like it doesn't have really exceeding amounts of magic and stuff. It's very gritty and like rooted. High fantasy is like Lord of the Rings with elves and stuff like that.
Sure, but what
Yeah.
I will give Game of Thrones to its credit, it does have what I would call filthy magic. A little bit of that blood, a little bit of that grittier looking, dirty magic,
dark
right?
magic and everything.
Yeah, almost does feel like
The great
Dark
thing
Souls.
about Game of Thrones, not to get too off subject, but it's a world where magic used to exist, but hasn't existed for like hundreds of years, but is now slowly coming back into the world. And I think that's kind of an interesting take on it. So.
You see that a lot as a trope, though. I mean, like Star Wars with the Jedi and the Force, you know, coming back with Luke, where it's been gone for a long time.
Right.
All right, well, I'm just going to jump on the biggest obstacle here. If you're making a Dark Souls movie, right, the problem with movies is they require a story. And Dark Souls has a very obtuse story. It's hard to understand. It's hard to tell. What is the story? From what perspective? The player character, the story is you die a lot until, you link the flame.
That's interesting. As a viewer, as a fan, what would you want the story to fill in? I would say you just brought up a very interesting point. A live, die, repeat aspect, right?
Right.
You've got a character you can hold on to who maybe is coming back and forth several
You
times.
think you would spin that into the movie itself?
Oh, I definitely would. I think that's a huge part of
If you
playing
did
the
not,
game.
fans would go crazy.
It
That's
has to
interesting.
be.
I never thought about, actually, I just thought about, making it as a straight adaptation of whatever the story was.
See, I think that might fall a little bit too much into the Warcraft realm, where
True.
that's a bad video game adaptation, in my opinion, where you're really losing the magic of what the video game gives you.
Right.
To make a good video game movie, I feel like you have to acknowledge that it comes from a video game and bring in some of those elements through storytelling. Like the idea of live, die, repeat is pretty on par for what you expect.
I was thinking that too. That's the vehicle, right? Like if you have a character who's continually dying, you're gonna like fight the same boss character, right? They're gonna encounter it, die, and then like they're alive, but like they're injured, or like they have this psychological effect of like, why do I have to keep doing this? Like you would have to play it like that. There's also in Dark Souls 2 a big theme of like almost dementia. Like people,
I love that.
people die and come back to life so many times they slowly lose their memories, lose their purpose.
They're fading away. Their souls are fading
Their
away.
minds fading, their souls fading away. Why am I here, right? And that's, you could play with that. What is my purpose? Trying to be reminded, why are they pursuing this quest at all?
So you guys are kind of describing like Memento meets Live, Die, Repeat, or Edge of Tomorrow, whatever that Tom Cruise movie is.
Set to
called.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, set in the Game of Thrones world.
That's
Well,
a pretty good recipe.
Let me establish an aesthetic with you guys real quick. Let me ask you this. Are you talking live action? Are you talking sort of a CGI hybrid like we've seen with the video game adaptation before? Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, a kind of panned film.
Yeah.
Or how about an animated movie? I'm personally kind of seeing a Miyazaki-esque.
I mean, maybe not Miyazaki, but Berserk, the manga, which heavily inspired
yes.
Dark Souls. They have an anime, right? It's super dark. You could do a Dark Souls
Bloody,
anime.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We've seen Castlevania turned into a show like that on Netflix. Maybe
Yes,
that's where
very,
the
very good
future
show.
of the
Yep.
film lies.
And I
for it.
would not put it past Bandai Namco to do something like that.
That would be cool. I think if they want to make it like a blockbuster type movie, it would have to be live action, and if it was like a big budget type of thing.
That worries me. I think that might be the biggest gamble, but I would certainly love to see that adaptation.
We've seen video games fail in the past trying to do exactly that. Like, remember when everyone thought Assassin's Creed was
yeah.
going to break
boy.
the mold of
Well, I could
video
tell
game
that
movies?
it was never going to work.
Kuziel,
Even though they got
ooh.
Michael Fassbender, a great actor.
Jacob, you're a great example of a Michael Fassbender fan. You were into that movie beyond
Yeah, that's right.
Assassin's Creed. How did you feel after it came out?
I mean, I didn't think it was going to be good to begin with. Like, I thought from the trailer, I didn't think it was going to be good. I just thought they got a good actor to me because I think Michael Fassbender is a good actor, but it wasn't a good movie for sure.
No. You were really hoping Rampage would be truer to the source material.
That's probably one of the best.
It's one of the
video
best
game movies.
reviewed
Oh.
video game movies of all time, probably.
But again, I feel like that's coming back to what Colin said earlier. It matches the tone where you have to kind of acknowledge it came from a video game.
Right.
It's a little goofier.
Yeah, the
over
story
the
of
top,
Rampage. Big monkey, he punch. Like they got that.
Big Monkey,
That's
he
right.
do punch.
Well, the smart thing they did is they made one of the monsters like more sympathetic, so you could be like, because if it was just the straight like monsters terrorizing a city, how could you sympathize with them?
Yeah,
you know?
where's your anchor point?
Through the rock.
Yeah. Big meets bigger. What a tagline. Dark meets darker. Dark Souls, the movie, right?
Well, all right, so what am I hearing? I'm hearing 3 live actions.
I would.
I would like to see a live action Bloodborne starring Keanu Reeves.
Ooh, I love this. Hit me with this,
Wow.
please.
Well, when I made my character in Bloodborne, he looked a lot like Keanu Reeves.
Okay, great reason.
John Wick, Chapter 4.
Yeah, okay.
Yo.
Yeah, but like a Victorian set, like just do the story of Bloodborne, and I think Keanu Reeves would be a good choice. He's getting a little older, but as we know, he's immortal, so I think he could do a good job.
So he could die and come back to life and
It would match.
become a moon slug.
Can I say, actually,
you
I
get
think
addicted to the blood.
Can I say I think actually Bloodborne would be the easiest adaptation of all. I can see sort of a From Hell, a Johnny Depp, real grisly aesthetic
Right,
to that.
yeah.
Very
Would
dark
be really cool,
cinematography.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there, Colin. I feel like it is definitely the most accessible of the series.
It has familiar monsters too, like werewolves people know about. Like
Yeah.
I've seen those.
yeah.
I
Not like
guess
in the
it's
real
just
world,
less
but in
confusing
movies.
plotting.
And as you go on in Bloodborne, you get more and more like insane, and you start like seeing things you didn't see before. And there's like giant Lovecraftian creatures in the air that have been there the whole time. You just didn't have the insight to see them. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's this concept of knowledge, right? Like the more you learn about the true world, the more insane you go.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of characters who go crazy because they know the world as it is. They see all these monstrosities, these eldritch creatures.
Yeah.
To play with that in a movie would be really cool.
Well, here's your sympathetic character, and just what you said, Mike. The more you learn about it, how about in Dark Souls, Sif, the compatriot, the pet to Artorias, the original knight
Yep.
of it. Sif, guys, just so you know, is a giant wolf that you fight halfway through. Now
right.
you learn after battling, or maybe before, if you've Wikipedia'd it, that he's actually a very tragic figure. That he's sort of there against his will, and he's trying to work for his master still. That's exactly what you're saying. That plays with that degradation of memory. The more you know about the world, the tougher it is. I think that's something that these games really carry over through all their narratives.
Yeah. Definitely.
And another thing too that they touch on this idea that like, are you a good guy? Like, is what you're doing right? Like, is linking the fire good for the world? Like, should we continue existing even though it's shit, or should we just end it all? Like, what is the world, even if it's terrible, do we keep the world going? That's kind of what they ask you. And also, like, there's times where you're just invading what could be somebody's home. Like, I'm just killing citizens here. Like, what am I doing? In Demon Souls, there's a pit where all these, like, dead baby spirits are. And the Maiden Estrella is one of the great souls. You're supposed to kill her. And she's just down there protecting those that have been discarded by the world.
Right.
And you kill her. And it's like, maybe I'm not a great person.
All of these seem like great little morality characters you would meet throughout either a series or a film that just kind of build the world for you through their own experiences. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
A backstory anime of Artorias and Sif.
Oh, that I would love.
That would be great. Like the wolf knight and his little pet wolf. He trains his wolf to fight with a sword in his mouth, and it's like
So
his little
cute.
buddy. And then to the tragedy of Artorias, R.I.P. And then that's it.
The Fox and the Hound, the darker
The
version.
darker version, yes.
So here we go. We got a live-action Game of Thrones inspired movie that contains dramatic elements, that has a live, die, repeat element, that has a memento part to it. who you guys thinking directs this picture? Anybody?
I was going to say for Bloodborne, I said Keanu Reeves to star, Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, I'm loving that pick, Jacob. That's a great pick.
That's a good fit. So
That's a
I'll
really
throw that
great
out
pick.
there.
Okay,
He could also
that's
do Dark
pretty
Souls
good.
too. I don't know who I would get for Dark Souls specifically, but
With medieval fantasy, I don't know. I'm drawing kind of a blank here.
Peter Jackson.
I want him to
it's
be.
got to be.
No.
He's got the horror background, guys. Let's talk about that
Frighteners.
with Meet the
Frighteners.
Freebles. He's got Frighteners.
Yeah, Meet the Feebles, Frighteners. Obviously, you have the connection through Lord of the Rings and King Kong. He's
Yeah,
done
I guess
this
that's-
type
I
of
guess
film.
that
I don't know
the
if he's edgy enough
It's not
anymore.
edgy.
like
That's
he
my
used to
fear is that
be,
he's
but-
kind of aged out of a
Yeah.
movie like this, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, The Hobbit, like
It's
Oh,
so
I never saw
glamorized.
any
It's so
of those.
adorable. Not
Yeah.
at all like
Well, 'cause he's-
what you'd hope for.
He's got that high fantasy aesthetic. Everything, elves are glowing and shimmery, right?
Right.
I just want some dirt on everything, gritty.
yeah, I think should be closer to the Game of Thrones TV series tone than like something like a Lord of the Rings or like aesthetic as well. Too.
Well, I'll throw it out. Here's a wild pick. This guy, Tim Miller, he's the guy who did Deadpool, right? He's about to take over the Terminator universe. I see that as a guy who can really play with genre, who might come up with some crazy imagery.
Whoever it is, I want them to be a genuine fan of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would hope so. I think in this world, people love this video game so much, I think you might find somebody who really does consider it their favorite, who might take over this film.
It's interesting that you saw someone like Duncan Jones go from a style that you think would have fit Dark Souls with Moon and Mute and, a little more grounded things like that. But then he jumped to the World of Warcraft movie and it just didn't have that aesthetic.
well,
it was
Warcraft,
much more high fantasy.
That's so true.
It had a lot of world building to set up, and it didn't. I don't think it told the best story that it could have in that world, and so I think that's probably one reason why it didn't work
To
out.
its
Even
own
though Duncan
detriment.
Jones was a big fan of Warcraft, and it didn't seem like it was really made by like a fan that was like really invested in it. I
Yeah.
guess.
But I do think like if he hadn't have made that and he had made Dark Souls instead and the budget was a little lower, I guess maybe that's the movie I would have wanted to see. Like the guy who made Moon making Dark
Yeah.
Souls.
Yeah, we wish.
Well, who knows if we'll ever see a Dark Souls movie? I'm sure we'll see some type of spin-off content. It's bigger than ever. The remaster's probably going to break some Switch, or it's going to break some records. Dark Souls 3 is already the top-selling game for Bandai Namco. They both won Game of the Year, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3. It's just getting bigger and bigger as we go on. So,
Dark Souls has a bright future, guys.
it has a bright future. The souls are dark. Future is bright.
Praise the sun.
Praise the sun.
Praise the sun.
We're talking comics. Flick the right stick to lock on. See, that was my
Oh, I fucked that guy up.
Yeah, you can lock on, and then your player will be targeting that character.
Oh, these guys are bitches.
Hey, try pressing Y. I think that's how you dual wield. Maybe you might like that more.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, because then you just pole arm in it.
You guys got to feel.
Oh, shit!
B is roll.
Sorry, you rolled off a cliff, dude.
Wow. All right, we're talking Dark Souls comics. What inspired Dark Souls? There's a couple manga series that inspired it, and some comics have been spun off, especially with the impending release of the remaster, which will be out by the time you hear this. It's common knowledge that Dark Souls has been based heavily on Berserk and also some influences from the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure manga and anime. And there have been a couple comics put out. The Age of Fire is the newest one. It's a prequel to Dark Souls 1, showing the four lords and their rise. Breath of Andalus, Legends of the Flame, Winter's Spite, Tales of Ember. And they are all put out by Titan Comics. Joe, do you know anything about Titan?
Titan Comics, from what I know, they're like a smaller company, not exactly on the level of Image and obviously not on the level of DC or Marvel. But what they do is buy up the rights to some other things that you wouldn't expect to have comics, like Warhammer or Doctor Who, basically like video game, TV, and like I think they have one or two movies, but I'm not sure which. But what they do then is just like kind of make these books that aren't necessarily the same. I don't know. I read through the Dark Souls ones that you'd mentioned when you told us we were going to be doing this episode.
Yep.
But I still didn't understand the story, guys.
Hey, would you call it a bit of a cash grab, maybe Titan's doing?
Maybe, but I think there also are fans that are just like dying for any content.
Oh, I
And,
think that's fair. That's a very good point. I certainly would love to see some of that stuff.
And from what you guys have said about the way the world is told, it's really open to interpretation because it's kind of just how
Absolutely.
you go through it.
Yeah.
But even reading like the issues that you had mentioned, just kind of scrolling through them, a little difficult to get my head around. I was struggling.
Yeah, and I read a couple too, and they just feel like insert generic fantasy name here. You know, they're putting
Very
a couple,
much so.
they use a couple proper nouns from the Dark Souls universe and put it on a generic fantasy comic. They're not that great, people.
So you don't think anything from the comics could be used to adapt into like a show, like maybe like a show like Castlevania on Netflix or something like that?
Well, these comics are licensed to Titan from Bandai Namco. I think it's exclusively just to try to squeeze another couple dollars out of the thing, and they're not really canon.
And I think you could definitely tell that just based from the cover of the book. The first thing are all of the credits from the game, like the game designers and all of that
great.
listed right on the comic
That's
book,
true.
which is great. I'm glad those people are getting recognition, but obviously you're not too concerned with the people who made the book as you are the people who made the game, trying
Right.
to sell the game through the book.
Yeah, so you're giving all the props to the game developers instead of the people writing the book.
So it's more of a promotional material than anything.
It's
really.
definitely a
It
promotional
seemed
material.
that way.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like Mike mentioned, the stories themselves sort of feel almost like the Canterbury Tales, you know, like old stories dug up, adapted, just thrown around. Any typical fantasy story that you could use, they just sort of slot right in. But I would love to talk about what you said about the manga specifically.
Yeah.
Berserk and the adaptation of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I think the clearest reflection that you see of that stuff, of that material inside Dark Souls, is the hyper-masculinity of it all.
You think there's a hyper-masculinity element in Dark Souls?
I would absolutely call it. There's certainly not much of a feminine energy to Dark Souls. When women are presented, it's in a very sexual light, I would say.
Was we talking Guinevere?
I would say Guinevere. I would say a couple different aspects.
Oh, so is that almost like I've seen with the Witcher game and like the memes that they have? Or
Ooh, Witcher, even more a little adult, I would say.
What I understand about Guinevere, obviously, all right, if you don't know who Guinevere is, you get to the end of Orlando. She's chilling on her couch. She's endowed. Great chest ahead are the soapstone messages, right? Apparently, the guy designed that character, and the designer of the character was, like, the artist was so happy with his design that Miyazaki couldn't be like, nah, dude.
Oh, no. It was a pity.
Yeah, the guy was like, oh, I did a really good job, right, boss? And he's like, yeah.
You did all right.
And they let him put it in, like, you know. But, I mean, Guts, looking at the character from Mega, definitely, like, this hyper-masculinity, he is, like, unstoppable force of just rage.
Well, sure, look at his weapon, a gigantic sword. We see that reflected in Dark Souls as well. Armor, dirt, dark, brick, everything.
Themes
is-
of corruption, death, right?
Oh, Ornstein and Smog, two gigantic characters who are larger than life, who just appear as half demon, half monsters, but still contain masculine faces. And not to say that the universe is inappropriate to an extent. You have Gwendolyn, a character who is actually transsexual or pansexual, I should
Right.
say, interestingly.
Yeah, the son of Gwyn raised as a daughter because he was associated with the moon, stuff like that. There's weird, like if you want to go to the dark, like, theming or, concepts, like, look at the Executioner's Chariot of Dark Souls 2. They take these prisoners, they throw them in this arena where these demon horses and a skeleton on a chariot run them down, and they come back to life for eternity, and they're just getting run over by these
Brutal.
horses forever. That's Berserk as fuck. Like, this existence of just getting destroyed every day.
Hell, medieval fantasy hell on Earth.
Exactly. So that comes through the strongest, you can definitely tell. Miyazaki apparently read a lot of Western fantasy books from the library, but some of the words were too difficult for him to understand at that age, so he had to fill in the blanks. He felt like that was some of the fun, was trying to figure out the story himself.
Wow, you really see that reflected in Dark Souls, certainly.
Exactly. So that's kind of how it gets in there. So you definitely see the Berserk reference and then that style of storytelling put in. JoJo, there's just like some characters. Tarkus, there's an NPC called Iron Tarkus. There's a character in JoJo called Tarkus. Just little callbacks like that.
Oh, very cool.
And JoJo's one of those ones where I don't even follow anime that closely, but I've heard and seen
there's
clips
memes,
and
yep.
all of that.
Oh yeah, I know of JoJo.
That
I've
to be
watched Berserk
continued.
too. I'm a big fan of Berserk. That's one of the best animes that I've seen for sure.
Yeah, Band of the Hawk. Griffith, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know my brother.
Well, Griffith,
certainly
I
enjoys
do
that.
like him as a character, even though bad guy.
He's a bad guy. You're a little edgelord.
Yeah, you're a little edgelord. You love the bad guys.
Griffith is kind of like the Kylo Ren of Berserk.
Yeah, you could
But he's
say.
worse than Kylo Ren.
He's way worse.
He does worse things.
Because he doesn't take his shirt off, or
He's a bad man.
Not
We'll tell you
enough.
off
Well,
cast.
he's a good looking guy though.
He's a bad man.
So what are we hoping for the future for comics for Dark Souls?
I don't need him.
Ooh, Mike, our take.
Mike said, "No thanks."
Yeah, please throw it away.
Drake meme. Hand up.
It's not necessary.
Yeah, you don't need him. The game is already, it does its job. Like, I don't even think I need a movie. I would like to see them try. But for comics, it's already influenced by that stuff. Like, it lives as an amalgam of the things that influence Miyazaki. Like, it doesn't need to become something else. Like, it's so good as is.
I'll tell you, the one thing I don't need is don't let one of the big two get a hold of Dark Souls. I don't need Marvel and I don't need DC getting its hooks into Dark Souls. That would elaborate things out a little too much. Throw it to one of the smaller publishers, IDW, Dark Horse. I think they would do it a great service.
Okay, so those are still pretty wide release. Like you'd like to see it on the shelves. Of
Oh,
the comic
absolutely.
book store.
Boom. I'm not taking Mike's stance here. It's not that I want to see the mythos develop so much. Hell, let me pitch one to you right now. I think you could do a completely silent Dark Souls comic book. Just do incredibly
Just
beautiful
through
panels.
images?
Yeah, that just tell their own story. That's how you're playing the game. But still, I think with a certain artistry, it could certainly validate itself.
I think what could be cool is instead of sort of like a weekly release, maybe just do like a graphic novel style where the whole limited series is released at once, and then maybe do like a black and white art style or something
Oh,
like that. Could
wow,
be
that
really
would be
cool.
gorgeous.
So you're picturing something that's like really manga inspired.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, it's funny that you say that because while I was doing my research, I did find a fan-made comic called War of the Ancient Dragons. And it's all fan-made. It's all black and white, very manga influenced, like Jacob said. But it's mostly visual. There's almost no dialogue bubbles. There's
Okay,
some.
so this is what we're talking about. Let's point our fans in this direction. War of the Dragons.
Yeah, it's basically telling you how Gwyn and his four knights, Artorias and Hawkeye go, Karim and Ornstein defeated the dragons to create the Age of Fire, the Age of Man. And so it's a prequel to Dark Souls. And it's fan-made, and the art style is really good. It's only one volume right now, but it's called War of the Ancient Dragons. If you Google that with Dark Souls comic, and we can include a note on the show notes for you.
Well, I will definitely check that out.
Yeah, I got to say, that sounds really enticing.
Yeah, I'll drop a link in the notes for everybody. I think that's comics, though, unless anybody has anything else to say regarding what they would like to see.
No, unfortunately, it's not seeming like Dark Souls is too normie when it comes to comics, so maybe we'll see that change in the future.
The universe isn't tuned for the comic world, I don't think.
Well, there's fans of everything.
That's
You know,
true.
Yeah.
hopefully some Dark Souls fan comes along and we get to see, what you were just pitching, but in stores for everybody.
That's true, as long as it
Pay
increases.
them for their work.
Yeah, there we go.
Create some jobs here. You could do side stories, like the Artorias Sif thing. That could be a comic, or backstories of like Siegmeyer, like different NPCs that we love. Solaire, right? Treat him right. Stuff like that. I guess you
Give
could
them
explore.
their own runs.
All right, fans, let's see you creating your own. If you do, please send them to us.
That's right. All right. Well, that's a wrap for comics, and we'll be wrapping it up.
Oh, archers!
There's an archer up on my leg.
Dude!
Crushing it.
Joe! I didn't even know you could. That was awesome. What a great block.
Thanks. I just barely tried.
Take that archer out real quick.
Bam, sucker!
What's that say on the Praise
Praise the sun! And he makes it to his first bonfire. We're going to call that a win, folks. Great job, Joe.
Hey, thanks, man. Did it.
All right, so we've been talking Dark Souls, from the video game to movie ideas to comics that exist and influenced it, and we've had quite a journey. And I just want to quickly ask everybody, is there anything that stands out for the series for you? What comes to your mind when you
Look,
think Dark Souls?
here's what I want to say about Dark Souls. Why it's one of my favorite video games. Here's my favorite thing about it. I think Dark Souls captures that childhood video game playing feeling better than any other video game. When I'm playing a side-scroller like Mega Man and I get touched by an enemy and I die, or when I fight the boss, it's the exact same thing. One touch and I'm dead. In Dark Souls, the power scaling is incredible. It doesn't creep like every other video game. When you fight an enemy, it's the most deadly fight you've ever been in, regardless if they're the weakest enemy you've seen or a boss. It keeps that scale the entire time, and I love that it keeps that thread alive and keeps me playing it.
That's great. It's a great point.
For sure.
Hey, Joe, all right. Any final thoughts on Dark Souls?
Having come into this completely normie, getting my first experience with my hands on a controller, as frustrating as it is, I think I'd like to explore the universe a little more. The comics didn't really grab me, but, the gameplay is definitely exciting. And hearing how passionate you guys are about the world you build for yourself, it's definitely enticing. So I think you guys, you've sold me.
As a first timer not getting turned off, I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah. It has like a skills like floor to entry. Right?
Absolutely.
But if you can get past that, it's
so frustrating.
So rewarding though.
I agree with that. And as like a mid-level Soulsborne player, I do agree with Joe on that. And I could get a little more into it. I just have a lot of other games that I like to play, so most of my video gaming time is taken up by that. But Bloodborne, great game overall, and I think I went into why it's a great game early in the podcast. And I would love to see a Bloodborne 2 at some point.
Yeah, I mean, Dark Souls, most influential series to me of video games, period. It's my favorite series. Like Colin said, you're learning through difficulty. If you can get past that, that entry threshold, once you learn how it works, it's like your brain opens up and it's like, okay. And then you can accomplish anything. You just have to work hard at it. The world building is super deep. And if you haven't played it or if you've just dabbled, get into it more.
Try
There's a
it
remake coming out, right?
It might not be for you, but it might. You
might take a deep dive like Mike here, who's wearing a Dark Souls shirt.
Dark Diver, Grendel, fighting the Dark Lurker. That's how deep I go. So this has been Normies Like Us.
All right, and we're gonna salute the sun, guys. This has been Colin,
Joe,
Mike,
and Jacob.
Don't you dare go hollow. Mbasa.
Bye.
Praise the sun.
What? You want to hear more?